37 resident electoral commissioners, 774 electoral officers, 37 what do they call them? Secretaries. In 10 years, there is no national commissioner that addressed a press conference that he did not agree with what Professor Mahmoud Commission was doing. That institutional cohesion can go on, without notice because we think it is normal. There was before 2015, there was a trend where the commission was going to be organized. A situation in where different national commissioners were already pitching camp and it became a concern. So the institutional cohesion is key. But don't also forget that by the time he took over in 2015, he took what Professor Jega initiated, including the human beings, the chief technical assistants of Professor Jega, Professor Okechukwu Ibano, Professor Mohammed Kuna, we are brought straight into the commission. They stayed through. So really, people like Professor Kuna have stayed 15 years in the commission. That's those kind of intellectual heavyweights supporting what Professor Jega did, supporting what Professor Mahmoud did is consolidation. And it brought rigor to the work that INEC has done. And I think that should not go unnoticed. The tendency in Nigeria is to reinvent the wheel. Once you come, you condemn everything your predecessor has done. But Professor Mahmoud continued and consolidated and then innovated, introduced more than 20 technological innovations into INEC. And a lot of people don't follow those. Why is technology important? It is not a silver bullet for solving your problems, but it reduces human interference. And that was why I started with the Anambra gubernatorial election. More importantly for me is also the fact, and that is what Faith referred to. Before, and James also talked about it, during Professor Jega, there are few people who ambushed, the commission. And they will come to us and tell us the thinking in INEC. We will be in the meeting, they will come to those meetings and say the thinking in INEC is. But Professor Mahmoud will take you into confidence, and you'll be excited that it's taking you into confidence. What he told you in confidence, he will come and tell in the civil society consultation meeting. He will also say it in the political. So there is anybody who says he does not follow the activities of INEC under the leadership of Professor Jega will either be mischievous or twisting logic just for whatever advantage. So he democratized consultation. And then finally for me, is the very important, very, very important process of democratizing governance within INEC. Today, INEC was able to suspend 3 national commissioners, including 2 professors who are in jail, I think from Akwa Ibom State. That is an organization that is introspective. Nigerian organizations are territorial. They close whatever shortcomings goes on with the organization. Even those who talk about IREM and talk about shoes and the rest of them, it is transparency. An organization that doesn't want you to know, we close down even before you see them. The transparency of the Mahmoud period became his undoing. But would that mean that you don't have to be transparent? Transparency has consequences. Finally, is to say again that the new commission, the one that is on ground now, must learn from the weakness of the Mahmoud era.
To make it
What was
premium
the weakness of the Mahmoud era?
Yes,
The weakness of the Mahmoud era was its inability to manage public issues effectively. And secondly, it was weak on political communication. It will wait until mischief makers and conspiracy theorists have gone to town and clouded the place before it will write statements that doesn't say much, or even eventually put what they should have given to the public in reports. But anything you want to hide in Nigeria, put it in a report. The truth of the matter is that what even us as civil society, our reports, our election reports, 99% of people who are even civil society people, who even work in the organizations that issue the report, have no idea of what is in their reports. They don't read them.
Thank you so much, High Chief Ezenwawago. We allowed you to go on because Madam Kemi took very little time so that you took part of it. Exactly. Okay, at this point in time, let's bring in the politician. Election management people have spoken, election observers, and election security experts have spoken. Let's bring in Alhaji Dantale, who is the chairman of IPAC. He is an active politician, has been on the field, and so he should be telling us what exactly the politicians and the political parties think of the last 10 years of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu. Let me thank the organizers of this program and thank the keynote speaker for the wonderful speech and the earlier presenters. One thing they failed to mention was these technologies were homegrown technologies. Mahmoud ensured that these technologies were all local technologies. It was all developed in INEC. None was imported. So how was the system before Professor Mahmoud came? But before he left? Then, during coalition, just like you mentioned, you have political parties coming with 2 trucks of sacks of documents from primary elections to coalition centers. At times, you have to pay some officials to ensure you're going in. At times, you have to influence officials to change the names of the people that actually won from the field. But Mahmoud stopped it using technology. Yes, he made the political parties to own the system of uploading their the names of their candidates. Initially, the parties were doing that, and INEC also realized that they were still replacing the names of our prospective candidates, winners of primary elections. What INEC did was to ensure that they have a backup of the names that actually contested for the primaries. For all the results that emerged from the primaries, INEC have it. If you try to upload it, the system will automatically reject it. What this have done, it has tremendously reduced pre-election litigations from primary elections. That is one. Two, there is no innovation that Mahmoud-led INEC introduced into the system without the organization. So for all the innovations, technological or otherwise, it must have acceptability of the major stakeholders. And outside that, for the technological innovations, political parties will be given the windows to introduce whoever they want from their parties to be trained by INEC. So they will be conversant with the use of such technology. INEC was training. Yes, Madam talked about vote buying the politician. That's a very critical observation. In the past, votes were manufactured, results were announced. You have 20-something million, 30-something million. So what did INEC under Professor Mahmoud teach? First, they cleaned the voters register during using technology. That you can have more than one person The name you have here, if you go to Bayelsa, is the same person. If you go to Kano, is the same thing. So it was organized. So with that process, the voter register was cleaned up. Then you have the underage voters that we used to have. There was a time we saw fake PVCs that were produced being thrown in the gutter. We saw it and we brought it, but it was not from INEC. Politicians, because those voters PVCs could not pass the test of the beavers because it was fake. That was because of technology introduced under the leadership of Professor Mahmoud. So now, when the election was conducted in 2023, between the general elections, Nigeria, yes, we came out, voters apathy, the turnout of people. No, it wasn't. Yes, even though there was voter apathy, but votes were no longer being manufacturable by politicians. The votes you see are the actual votes that Nigerians have voted. Nobody could vote more than once. That is one. And let's look at 2023 general elections again. For the first time in the history of Nigerian political democracy, that we have sitting governors who could not win senatorial election as sitting governors. It happened in Enugu. It happened in Benue. In Kebbi, that sitting governors couldn't win. Why? Because votes counted. A P2B who does not have councillors anywhere in LB, open president in Lagos, because votes counted, because of the job did under Professor Mahmoud.
Did not reduce during the period of Mahmoud. Now it appears that every contestant for an election, for reading best known to them, rejects the outcome of polls and goes to court, even when they know that they don't have a point. And probably because the judiciary, another stakeholder in the election process, too, usually allowed itself or conduct itself as if election adjudication is a Russian roulette, where people will try their luck. This is another area that also the present INEC leadership should look into. Mahmoud Yakubu did very well in terms of canvassing for electoral reform. However, he was not able to persuade government to take some concrete decisions on some sole issues that are at the core of election reform. We all remember the very beautiful and wonderful recommendations of the West panel, and also the beautiful recommendations that were rejected by Buhari, who refused to sign particular amendments to the Electoral Act. This is another thing the new INEC leadership should also look into. It is a preamble. You might wonder why there will always be electoral reform. Electoral reform is inevitable because changes in the electoral process are going to these areas are so many.
We want to collect legal fees from them and convince them to think that, look, you can win this, you can do this, and then of course we have issues with our judicial system where they think that at that overturnable, they can overturn it and they can do so. And there are so many other reasons why politicians lose elections, want to file petitions, and try to see if they can overturn, especially even at primary level, pre-election level, where people who did not stand for elections at the primary level have eventually became candidates in elections, won elections, and are sitting either as senators or House of Reps members today. When you look back at that, you begin to understand why these things happen. But at this point in time, let's bring in Dr. Emeka, who himself was, as we have been told, a commissioner, an INEC resident electoral commissioner, and one who conducted elections in a state where there was not a single petition. Well, let him tell us that. Dr. Emeka.
Thank you. It's always a little difficult speaking at the last part of it when some professionals have already made some valid point. Thank you. A lot of issues have been raised. A lot of commendations have been made. But for someone like me who worked under Professor Mahmoud Yakud, it's difficult to say everybody has said what I could have said. I needed to point out I have over 18 major achievements of Professor Mahmoud. About 11 of them have been dealt with by previous speakers. So, but I need to, because of time limits, I need to pick out about 3 major. One of them is the provision of Section 69 of our Constitution that talks about recall of elected people who people feel are not doing well. It started under the leadership of Professor Mahmoud in 2017. Not sincerely was fortunate to be part of that process that tested the recall exercise of Senator Dino Melaye from Kogi West, or Kogi Central. And one thing that is very central and important to note is that it was coming from the ruling party. And everybody thought that the whole exercise will go seamlessly the way it used to go in Nigerian context. Lo and behold, the verification exercise, which was one of the first that you need to activate in that process, never went through. Only 4.5% out of the 50 that was expected before you moved to referendum was caught, and that went down. Again, in the tail end of Professor Mahmoud's regime, the issue of recall of Natasha Akpoti came up again from the same Kogi, from the same ruling party. The same way that tested the integrity, the institutional integrity of INEC to handle such a thing. Section 69 is not an electoral act matter, it's a constitutional matter. So it has been there, and previous chairmen have never had that temerity to test it until he attempted. And of course, you know, courage. One of the features of courage is vulnerability. Number 2 is the issue of expansion of voting polling units and voter access. I'm sure we excluded that, but it's a very important thing that from 119 polling units, he created 179 polling units to make sure that the voting polling units get closer to the people so that they can participate well. And not only that, it was during that era that we removed, he made sure that no polling unit is cited in the House of Chiefs, emirs, religious leaders. You remove all the polling units to public spaces. If your community does not have a town hall or a public place, you will cite it at the middle of the road. So that, because politicians use those polling units that are cited around the politicians or traditional leaders as a means of violating the sacredness of people's mandate. Now, it is important for us to also note that the essential significance of INEC has become the talk of issues, because this is the institution through which power is transmitted from the people to those who will represent them. So for those who know that it is to be crossed, and then it begins to sink across Nigeria, forgetting that over 20-something achievements have been made by this regime in the last 10 years, of which I was part of it in the first 5 years. Professor Mahmoud made sure, because the level of criticism will say, okay, let's throw away any party who tries to want to improve the beavers, IREF, and others, and then talk about a different technology altogether. I can tell you has an ambition to create more confusion than what we have had so far. I believe I'm saying it from the point of an inner person who has gone through the process over time. Nigerians, we should be able to lay emphasis on who has the responsibility. In fact, my theory is that Mahmoud does not conduct elections, he facilitates the conduct of elections. Nigerians conduct elections. In any way, no, I had to recruit over 22,000 persons. Yes, I tried to do the postings to the best of my ability so that there won't be any infiltration from politicians. But these are Nigerians who will go to the polling units and absconders place themselves with a representative of a politician. If I don't know you, they don't know this. So Nigerians will wake up to their responsibilities. Where the responsibility is on voters, please let's place. If the responsibility is on security agencies, let's place. If the responsibility is on judiciary, but I can tell you, actually, the weakest point of Nigerian electoral jurisprudence is the judiciary and the Nigerian security. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mega. Thank you so much. I hope that each one of us is taking notes, and you have opportunity of asking questions for clarification purposes. Any one of the panelists will be ready to take your questions. So our last panelist is a lawyer, and maybe he wants to give us from the legal perspective. Madam Kemi gave us from the security perspective, even though she's a lawyer, but let's look at it from the legal perspective.
Thank you so much. Well, as a lawyer, the managing counsel of Lawyers Smith Attorneys here in Abuja, I will give the legal perspective. But we should also know that you cannot separate the legal perspective from the general context. Yes, most of the speakers have said what I would have loved to say in terms of the general context about, I will summarize it in 3 ways. the sustainable innovations of Professor Mahmood achieved accessibility. In terms of accessibility, I'm talking of more voters voting, ensuring that voters are not disenfranchised. So when you talk about expanding the polling units, which the last speaker mentioned, it's about persons with disabilities to vote, and even providing those platforms for IDPs to, which is a part of accessibility. When you talk of the seamless nature of collecting permanent voters cards, which was not the case before, nobody needed to bribe either INEC official or to go and queue up for days before you collect permanent voters. And I mean, you just walking at the time, INEC was even calling persons to come and pick their permanent voters card. So it's a part of the accessibility. Then I also want to talk about transparency. Transparency is what most of us also have dwelt on today, talking about the technologies. Those technologies were to ensure transparency in our electoral system. These innovations were made by Professor Mahmood. I don't want to call them INEC innovations. They were actually innovations in our electoral systems. So you see the transparency of that was introduced by modal voters accreditation system, the BVAS, the IRF, INEC result viewing system, yes, and also some other technologies which even the INEC staff here have mentioned. Not withstanding the challenges also in terms of maybe connectivity, in terms of hackers who try to hack INEC systems, but at least it was a starting point that we can build on. It is a sustainable development. So now that's about transparency, and then you talk about integrity, the integrity of INEC staff. You talk for us to see INEC punishing their own staff for the electoral offenses that they would have committed or for being unethical, or the other. It was very, very heartwarming. Then you talk about even now talking about this integrity. Now I also want us to even go to the Electoral Act of 2022, which Professor Mahmoud Jega, in conjunction with the civil society and other stakeholders in the electoral system, push on. In fact, I remember that when he came in, we were even expecting this act before the 2019 election. And INEC was waiting for this legislation before they could release their election and guideline. But unfortunately, it did not come out. But they did not give up. Then we now had this 2022 Electoral Act, which had a lot of innovations. I mean, it covered a lot of milestones that I want to point out, and that is the legal perspective we are talking about. It starts from that. Now, come to think of it now that INEC as an organization will not register voters 90 days to the conduct of general elections. It will stop voters registration. It will rather display voters register. It shows sanity in the system. Come to think of the fact that continuous voters registration was introduced in section 10 of the Act 2, and that was an innovation too by this Professor Mahmood, which was actually which as enacted as a legal framework. Now it becomes to what is advantage of what are the advantages of continuous voters registration? You know, that young persons who were turning up 18, age of voting, they had the opportunity to register. They didn't have to say that I missed this election because by the time I turned 18, registration had stopped. So it was a whole lot of advantage. So you come to think of the fact that even reducing the amount that was spent on elections, that if you are conducting a presidential election, you don't have to spend, it should be an offense for you to spend more than 7 billion naira. And if you are conducting a gubernatorial election, you don't have to spend more than 1 billion naira, otherwise it's an electoral offense. If you are going for senatorial House of Reps, I think 100 million and 70 billion naira respectively. It was an innovation. So now you also look at some other things like stopping the display of voters' card. That's by an INEC official stopping the display of voters became an offense. So INEC was looking inward. So you also saw that the issue of impersonation was taken more seriously, even after introducing all these technologies that reduce that case. So it was taken more seriously. So there were so many innovations, legal innovations that this 2022 Act introduced. I cannot start mentioning it all because of the limited time. So what I want to say is that these innovations were so overwhelming that even if, yes, there is still room for improvement, but now we're not calling of an act that will repeat this act now. It could just be an amendment. Unlike before, this act replaced the 2010 act. It entirely repealed it. But now I think if there's any amendment, that you just get the amendment to the act, not a new law altogether, because much has been done in terms of this new act. Then I want to talk about finally the judiciary. Yes, the role of the judiciary in this electoral system has been very, very argumentative. Yes, I'm in no place to criticize the decisions of the Supreme Court. Yes, yes, because the Supreme Court is the highest court, and whatever they say is the law. But what boggles the mind of the average Nigerian and like the sociologists that are here too is that sometimes these decisions are very, very inconsistent. So I don't know the reason for the inconsistency. I'm on the outside, but what I would urge our judiciary or the judicial system is that yes, we are taught that judicial precedents are the foundation of our laws. Let's maintain that tradition. That is my suggestion. Then, as a final word, I want to say that we have challenges. Professor Mahmoud also had his own challenges. Yes, in 2019 election, the voter turnout was 35% or so. But in 2023, it was just 18%. It does not speak good about us. 28%, okay. But it was less than the previous one. So it does not speak good about us. But that is not like someone said, that is not the job of, entire job of, that job is entirely for Professor Mahmoud or the INEC, the Electoral Management Board to do. There's a role for the National Orientation Agency. There's a role for the Ministry of Information. There's a role for political parties. There's a role for even social cultural organizations like all these Ohanese, Arewa, and the one we have in the West too. They have roles to play in terms of mobilization, in terms of sensitization too. That you go and pick your voters' card, and we know that election, like someone will say, you say that an electoral management body conducts the election, but a country goes to the poll. And if you look at that statement, a country goes to the poll, it is very, very deep. It means that in an election, it's a system, and everybody has a role to play. The political party, the observers, the judiciary, like we have mentioned, the security agents, even the voters in safeguarding their votes. So if everybody understands that there is a standard of conduct and there's an expectation, and you abide by that, then we'll have more successful elections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I told you he's a lawyer, and you know that lawyers talk a lot. Now it's time to take questions. If you have questions, please indicate that. But I'll start this process by asking my own questions from this end, and any member of the panel can take it up. Professor Mahmoud Jega, 10 years of leadership. Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, 10 years of leadership at INEC. The question has always been asked, was he a genuine reformer? Did he transform the Nigerian electoral system in such a way that is sustainable? And what is the road ahead for the new man at the helm of affairs? These are issues that we need to take a look at. I know that Dr. Emeka talked about the whole issue of recall process. I know that the High Chief is very eager to speak on that, but please come up with your questions, come up with your inquiries, and any member of the panel can take them up. So I've asked, was Professor Yakubu a genuine reformer? Did he transform Nigeria's electoral system in such a manner that you think that those reforms are sustainable? And will the new man at the helm of affairs, or will INEC as an institution continue to build on the gains that were made in the last 10 years? And then, of course, what is the road that lies ahead for the new health plan. Anybody can do it.
I would say yes, Professor Mahmoud, so well, tremendous. And we are challenging the new man to build on some of those legacies. He has sanitized. When you talk about litigation, we don't want to, well, me, I don't want to crucify anybody, but you see, lawyers will go to court without you knowing because they want to be signed. You go. Well, some, even in this commission, would want to go to court because they want, if they go to court, something will come out of the process, they will be attending. So, so many things are involved. Politicians want to go to court because they want to negotiate. So many things are involved. It has nothing to do with INEC. INEC is not the one that buy vote. I know doesn't sell vote. So if INEC has even value, the cost of vote now is higher than what it was. Because the vote, you cannot manipulate it. Now you have to buy. So who is buying and who is paying? So all of us are involved. But what you see, it's not just about the man who is certainly who champion the cause of INEC. It's about all of us as Nigerians. All of us. We have to redefine what we want. There's one thing that I've always talked about, that we also want the media, members of the media, to help us amplify. Are we politicians going to seek election for the purpose of the people or for our self-interest? The lucrativity of political office is so outrageous that we will deploy every asset now, whether it is legal or illegal, to circumvent the system because of the value at the end. So we need to begin to look at ourselves. Nigeria is bleeding. We need to be better. And then looking at, we are not even looking at the whole democracy. There is a state independent electoral commission, or there are state independent electoral commission, which are also making up the constitution, and there's INEC. The average Nigerian in the village does not know the difference between CIEC and INEC. So for elections conducted by CIEC, they will also call it INEC. So IPAC have been advocating for the scrapping of CIEC because what is happening at the state level is nothing compared to election. It is a jamboree. The governors just pick whoever they want or their loyalists and then make them their chairman. Yes, today you are the governor. You won't be there forever. You will leave. So we should look at it and support something good that sanitize the system. So these are some of the things we are looking at. Even the appointment of the chairman of INEC himself, we have been advocating that the power to appoint INEC chairman should be stripped. And the executive should be stripped of the power to appoint INEC chairman. It should be open to Nigerians who are interested parties to seek. Having passed through security screening, then the stakeholders from political parties who are the players and civil can vote. So these are some of the requirements. So we need the constitution to be amended, the electoral act to be amended, so that the next person who is coming can fly better. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I wanted us to look at the relationship between vote buying and voter turnout. The politicians target a particular number of votes to win. And so if you have, can they pay? Votes are in who paid as much as 20,000 naira per vote. In the last KB by-election, motorbikes were used for voter inducement. So when you are talking about turnout, you also have to be thinking that if votes count, will the politicians allow more people to come out? What the Mahmoud Commission did is that it returned substantially powers to the voters. Alhaji Dantile is a politician. The money that is used to buy the voter now was given to electoral officers. Cash. They bring the results, bring the ballot to the houses of politicians. We saw that
happened in the 2023 of Nigeria, in the 2003 Nigeria, 2007 Nigeria. These ballots were printed in hotel rooms, and thugs bring them back to the polling station, polling unit, take the one that was done by the people and subvert it. So the Mahmoud Commission returned power substantially to the voter. That is why politicians now take their money to the voters to buy them. If you check all the court-induced elections, the ones like Anambra, for instance, you'll find out that the number does not go beyond 300, 200. In Ondo, it doesn't go beyond sharing in Edo, it is 500, 600. So it is about payment. So when we talk about voter turnout, we must be able to relate it with the transactional nature of our politics. But the question you ask is he a reformer? Is the commission a reformer, or will it be sustained? The problem with reforms is that the Nigerian political elites are absent from conversations about reform. And the tragedy is that the place you go to for reforms are to the politicians. INEC is a law-dependent organization. Everything is about the law. So if the politicians don't want a reform, they kill it in the National Assembly. And they create loopholes. They put deliberate, intentional loopholes in the law that hamstrung the hand of the election administration. People talk about Uwe's report. Uwe's report, 69 of those reports are administrative. And all of those reports have been done by INEC, the ones that are administrative. The ones that are not done are the ones that require legal. The National Assembly is not willing to go that route. So INEC, you do this report, they take the one that concerns them. The 2014 National Conference did some recommendations. From those recommendations, INEC took the ones that concerned them and implemented them. The whole biometric accreditation is all recommendations from the 2014 National Conference. They have been implemented. So the focus is to, if you talk about sustainability, it has to do with the nature, character, complexion of your political elite. If the attitude of your political elite is subversive to reforms, you cannot have a sustainable process. So you have to define that. Then finally is clearly what we need to do. This new man, what will happen is that he should do everything to run away from hijack. Hijack by consultants and hijack by politicians. The minefields that they lay for people who are in political office. I wrote an article and I'm talking about, I said, look, Imoni, the Nigerian politician does not believe you have integrity. That's in his mind. Whether you are a policeman or you are an INEC official or you are a pastor or you are anything, he does not believe you are a journalist, he doesn't believe you have integrity. If he calls you and says, Money, I want you to do something for me, I'm giving you 1 million naira. If you say no, I can't do that, his thinking is not that you have integrity. It is that his opponents are giving you more money. So, attitudinal reforms is key. The media has to also play a big role in this attitudinal change. Look at what language is doing to us. Everybody you see, they say, after the 2023 election, there is a need to restore trust in the electoral process. That they need to rebuild trust in the electoral process. What does that mean? Election is a divisive enterprise, meaning that if you lose the election, there is no trust in that electoral process. If you win, there is trust. So when you are discussing trust, you have to be clear who you are listening to. Are you listening to institutional builders or you are listening to people who want to bring opprobrium and shame to institutions and tear them down with their language.
Turning it into what it ought not to be. People, again, are mindful of coming into a crowded place. On aside, then the element of technology that has been introduced. What is the element of the security in technology? I'm not sure our security agencies are looking at elections, digital security, cyber security from that lens. We're still at physical presence at polling units. We're still at physical presence at the collation centers, whereas the agency has moved beyond. Finally, there's a lot of attention on protection of materials, electoral materials, leaving out the personnel that conduct the elections. And here you talk about the ad hoc staff, the coppers that are deployed. They are open to attack. But we look at it beyond the coppers, even the police, what is the insurance that is protecting them? But a lot of attention on the materials without looking at the persons that also conduct the elections. On the judiciary, it's the power, it's also the money politics. I'm not sure most of us know that even our court process is shut down when we're getting close to elections. So it's not only the judges that are being deployed to tribunals, the court clerks, the support staff. So half of practically the judicial system is at a standstill. So everybody moves to that new place where the game is on. And just like Mr. Umagu said, Chief Umagu said, the money starts to play out there. From the posting of clerks, posting of judges, there's certain tribunals there's certain states that are lucrative. So you lobby to go to be posted to certain tribunals within certain states. So because you know that you would also you will recoup from there. So it's a whole spectrum, not only on the table of INEC, but for the security element, and I'll stop here. We keep raising Interconsultative Committee on Election Security, but what is the responsibility of the Office of the National Security Advisor? It's not clearly stated here, and they are co-chairs of the Interconsultative Committee on Election Security. So there ought to be joint deployment plan. ONSA should be able to coordinate a joint deployment plan, not that police should have its own, military should have its own, intelligence should have its own, JIB should be JIB, Joint Intelligence Board should be functional. So by this time, we should be having like a practice or dry run of joint intelligence, joint security deployment tested in the off cycles before you deploy it for the 2027 general elections. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, no. I'll come to you very quickly because there are issues that I want to raise with both.
Okay, I want to quickly answer your three questions. The first one was Mahmoud reform. I think the answer is obvious. It takes a genuine reformer to introduce 20 different innovations, as mentioned. This is not a frivolous thing. It is for real. And in addition, so many things have come out from the conversation here. How he increased the polling unit to 475,000. Jega attempted to do that. He did not succeed. There was a groundswell of opposition, all of mischief. He gave up, but he insisted and was able to do it. And the second question on whether this is sustainable, I think it is. Mahmoud himself consolidated and added upon what Jega did. And Amukitan is condemned to continue to do it. As a matter of fact, he has made a commitment that he will continue to do it. He has mentioned certain things like even using drones to address the problem of logistics. So I think innovation and more reform in INEC is going to continue, and I expect the new helmsman to try to do even more than what Mahmoud did. And of course, there are so many pieces of advice to give to the new man. And that takes me back to the earlier assertion I made, which I said was a bit of a weakness. Yes, it is not the responsibility of INEC alone to ensure high water standard. But water standard is a function of confidence. Many Nigerians, rightly or wrongly, arising from the poor political culture among Nigerians, believe that their votes don't count. So INEC has to do something in addition to the other election stakeholders to ensure that this deep-seated skepticism and pessimism is eliminated. So that's what I'm talking about.
Thank you so much. I'm going to come to Dr. Begude and Dr. Emeka now. I know that you are eager to respond to some of the questions, but in addition to those questions, two key issues. There's been some arguments or rather proposal, for instance, that INEC should not be made a statutory respondent in election petitions. Its role should be simply to come and tender evidence. Unlike what it is now, where any person who goes to tribunal, in addition to suing whoever is the winner, also choose INEC along, because INEC is statutory respondent to the elections. And that kind of pitches INEC against whoever is petitioning for that election. But his role should simply be to come and tender evidence when the tribunal, if and when the tribunal says, come and give us this, not as a statutory respondent. How do you respond to that? And then, of course, there's also been the conversation around electronic voting in Nigeria. Everybody keeps saying it as if it's so simple to achieve. What are your thoughts on those two issues, in addition to maybe your response to some of the questions that you want to?
Thank you. First of all, let me start with the first question about the genuineness of the reform. The first question you will, the first response, beyond what Professor Maria said, what are the key elements of a genuine reform? See, one of the key elements of the genuine reform is a reform that targets system, reform that targets law, and reform that targets the organization, become more effective and more successful. You will remember that prior to 2023, there have been INEC led civil society, the media, and other stakeholders for a massive electoral reform. And when that act came out, what you could see the way the Supreme Court interpreted the I am not a law student, barrister, but we know that whenever the National Assembly gives you a mandate to do something, that thing you've done becomes an administrative law. One of it is INEC guidelines and regulations, which was the guide in conducting elections. When INEC uses it, the court will say, no, it is not in the Constitution. And you have to put everything on it in our Constitution before things have started working. And people will turn around and blame the INEC leadership for Are we going to say we want to be lawless? One thing I knew Professor Mahmoud for is his ability to obey the law. As President of the General Commissioner said, enjoin us to peace. Do not cross the boundary when it comes to the law. Now, on the issue you've been talking about, the issue of becoming a witness to an activity, to a function, to an action that you conduct. That has been the biggest issue about getting INEC to become the witness in an election that is conducted. It is your responsibility to bring facts. Let's take, for instance, that of the 2020 election. The role of INEC still is very clear. Of INEC until much later, the result of INEC, because INEC established that, look, we conducted this election that there was voting and we're not going to vote yes. But because our law abided, what the Supreme Court says is what goes on. Nobody came back to INEC to say, yes, you did well in terms of pushing this narrative. And that was what led to the clamor that our courts should not be an extension of polling units where results are declared. That even if they disagree with the result, they should push it back to INEC for declaration. And that is why INEC cannot come and become a mere witness to a process that the instituted, conducted, and declared. They have to establish, look, this is what we did and how we did it. And of course, those who are part of the stakeholders will become the witness. One thing we should say is that INEC should be open. Take, for instance, the issue of Enugu. Immediately after the election, everybody rushed for CTC. And if you didn't plan it well, they will think that there is something fishy. But we got all the business centers to relocate to our office. It doesn't take us more than 3 days to give you. In fact, up to today, we are still asking some of them to come and pay for the photocopies that they asked for. And they left it and ran away when they saw that they had no case. A point of also correction, there were just 4 petitions during my time. 3 collapsed and 1 went up to Court of Appeal between Juliet Bekako of APC and Ikebremad of PDP. That was where that one rested. So it's important to put that correction across. But to be honest and to be fair and just to that institution, you cannot make him a bystander in an event in a decider. Otherwise, it will give the politicians the opportunity to, make a case that will be contradictory to the dictums of the electoral law, which INEC is the primary implementer of that law. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to start by answering. Hello. I want to start by answering. Whether the innovations introduced by Professor Mahmoud Yacoub will remain, I believe they will, because these are innovations that are far-reaching and they have already been domesticated. I don't know why this so I believe that the innovations introduced by Professor Mahmoud Yacoub will continue. Any INEC chairman that thinks he's going to do away with them is going to make a grave mistake. They have come to stay. And it is in the interest of the commission and the new chairman to continue and build upon them. Mahmoud Yacoub met innovations done by Jenga, and he continued with them and built upon them. The least we expect from Ahuputan is for him to build on what Professor Mahmoud has already established. Then on the issue of INEC, the court cases, INEC not being a statutory respondent, I want to align my my thoughts with my colleague. You cannot conceive and deliver a baby, and then the baby will now be declared not your baby. INEC conducted the elections, and like we said earlier, elections is a process. So I think INEC should be able to defend itself. Whatever you've done, you should be able to defend yourself. And I think there's something else that I want to bring to our attention. We are all aware that there's a new chairman in INEC today. We may not be aware that about 6 national commissioners are going to retire or leave office just before the 2027 general elections. There's going to be a lot of movement from the line staff, directors, and the national commissioners and some resident electoral commissioners. What does that translate for INEC? How is INEC going to overcome this? And I think this is food for thought. This is something for civil societies to start looking at and maybe profile suggestions and solutions to that. Because INEC is, as an institution, we were in INEC, and honestly, I will tell you this, that before you catch, you really understand what's going on, you need between 2 to 3 months. My colleague is here. So now that we are going to have new people on board just on the eve of election, how will that translate to free, fair, credible, and acceptable elections? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll take a few questions now. Questions only, no comments. Questions from the floor. We'll start with Irene. Oh, okay, yes. Is Irene ready? Okay.
Okay, thank you for this great opportunity. My name is Noble Awes. I research on jurisprudence and constitutional law. Many people have spoken to the issue of technology, and I want to streamline my question to the transmission of results real time, as promised by INEC in the last general election. And people have spoken so much innovation. And let me first thank Professor Mahmood because of the ambitious, conspicuous, and courageous move to bring innovation. Because when you are bringing innovations, you will be challenged by beneficiaries of the status quo. So it is not easy. That is courageous, and that's why I always appreciate him. And on the question is whether the intention and sincere purpose of technology which brought served that intention when it mattered most. And my humble opinion is not in the foundation.
Very quiet.
No, because during the collection of the presidential election results, and we have the glitches from INEC. And that matter was challenged in court, article versus INEC. And during the determination of that matter, I will say that technology has not brought the fault. It's not the fault of INEC. It is not also the fault of the judiciary, because everybody is saying the court, the court. In jurisprudence, there is a school of thought we call which is law as it is, not law as it ought to be. So when you come, when you start going to interpret legal issues, they will say what the law is, not what you are thinking is supposed to be. So the issue lies in the National Assembly. Let me appreciate INEC for when they exercise a quasi-legislative power and they made an administrative disciplinary law, which the INEC regulation to authenticate of that law conspicuously expressly provided for real-time transmission of results. But because the National Assembly, if you look at the provisions that talk about technology in the Electoral Act 2022, section 47, 64, and so on, There is no place the mention of transmission of results, IRF, came in. And this was what the court did, the law as it is. So my question to civil society representatives, stakeholders here, the problem is in National Assembly. What are the efforts that have been made after this and the no-cost question is no-cost? What are the attempts that have been made after this issue came up and the law as it is by the Supreme Court interpreting the electoral act that there is no express mention of heaven in the law? What are the attempts that have been made? Make it incumbent on National Assembly to make a provision in the electoral act which will expressly provide for real-time transmission of results.
About oil, your question, please make it brief so that as many people as possible.
Thank you very much. We must congratulate the organizers of this program. And of course, that's good. Our voice is to say that the last election brought out
because of how
the last election brought the voices of both communities to be part of the governance space. We talk about the fact that the environment was a bit more accessible to people with disabilities. And then we had electoral materials in rail and others that guided the line. And the environment may need to be more accessible. Then one of the questions that is coming up, because when we're talking about how sustainable is next chairman going to run again with the whole thing. We know there was adoption of biodiverse and RF, which gave enhanced the integrity, but issues such as violence and logistical failures in the legal disputes still continues. The violence are what frightens us. Because in 2019, the 178,459 firearms disappeared from police armory. Just 88,078 of them were AK rifles. And up to date, the guns and those rifles have not been discovered. And most of these guns and weapons are the ones that find themselves into the hands of political soldiers that exacerbate disability. Then we look at this issue of course, we have had more issues of kidnapping. So these are the issues. What can we do to, ensure that we as critical stakeholders make our own interventions? The new INEC chairman accepts this idea that every party was the key, because you were just going about some new commissioners who are going out of box. Sometimes people are projecting them as chairmen may also be interested in driving those new colorations that will drive, because of, their remaining in power. So I think there's a need for us to be able to do our own parts to see that we play a role in monitoring and ensuring that these people don't go out of order. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other? Any other, please? Okay. Please make it as brief as possible.
Go back, go, when you want to rush go, don't finish work.
I thank
Don't capture the main scene.
for this wonderful.
They say the essence why I got is to do the capture for. I can't be doing this and doing that. Making him the video so I can go and fuse it. So no delay.
Please introduce yourself, sir.
This is supposed to do somewhere else. So I just said that since we don't finish the main discourse.
Professor,
So I don't think
first
I don't think that's the one video.
last statement.
So that's how I was trying to no, yeah, he's in.
Contrary to the negative result given by
Wait, you to your brother.
Which one?
You have
it says that
You never flash for money.
does it mean that
You didn't say so.
It's not 9 o'clock, it's there.
the negative result don't remove the clear?
They are not particularly on the phone.
Thank you. Thank you. If there are no more questions,
No question.
This program.
okay,
We started late.
okay, please make it as brief as possible so that my panelists do not forget the questions that have been asked.
Okay, thank you very much. My
Thank
name is Irene Awunaike. I'm the president of League of Women Voters of Nigeria. Sorry, I ran.
Okay, you were supposed to give a good way message at the
Yeah,
beginning.
and I think that's has been taken by other events. I want to also add my voice to those in the room that have said that traditionally INEC has improved. I think way beyond what everybody expected someone to do. For us in the gender space, we had a robust review of the INEC gender policy, and we're glad to have made input as an organization into that document. And the gender department has also been strengthened. We have opportunity to engage with that department. And we are also excited to see we have more directors, female directors in INEC under his leadership. That for us was, a very good, sign to show that he was open to have an inclusive agency that had more women in leadership positions. For us, we enjoyed our relationship with him, having gotten enough information, and we had the opportunity to ask questions and get responses as a thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Great. Now we can respond to some of the. Okay, there's another person. Okay, please. I hope you don't forget the question about electronic voting. Is there a possibility in Nigeria?
Good afternoon. My name is Panturi Abubakar Karshi, representing persons with disability.
Of the primary elections.
No, your phone cannot leave there.
I'm also
That phone has locked to this place.
because about
So on that note, please, if you have not gotten the food, just stay where you are. We will bring the food to you. We have enough to go around. Yes. So, ICT, please queue in. ICT queue in the national anthem while we do the opening prayer. Sorry, the closing prayer by our Muslim brother.
Salat Nabi Karim.
It's about.
Oh Allah, we thank you as we have started this gathering and we have reached to the end of this program. As we are about to go to our various destinations, may Almighty Allah be with us and may Almighty Allah be with our great country. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار.
Nigeria wouldn't give which dog. Human being never chop the give dog.
Thank you very much.
Yes, but they go to
so please, we'll take the last. We'll take the last version or the last verse of the national anthem as part of our closing. If ICT is there, please may we all stand for the national anthem, please.
That's okay for you, Naba. Is it okay for you?
Thank you, ladies and
Have you
gentlemen.
passed through beggar?
Please,
Have you passed through beggar?
for those who still
Mm.
have not gotten
My baby.
their
Not
lunch,
carry
please just sit for the next 1 minute. You will have the lunch served.
Can I?
See your phone. Oh, you actually will eat.
So I hope every person registered.
This was not that. There's a shake that you know.
Oh,
Thank you very much. We are most grateful.
I didn't know. So it's your uncle. Are you leaving this one? Yes. What do you mean?